The 9th of February, 1945. The waters west of Fedje Island, off the Norwegian coast. Somewhere beneath the grey surface of the North Sea, a lone British submarine was hunting. HMS Venturer had been sent out from Lerwick alone. No escort. No consort vessel. No wolf pack of her own. Just one V-class boat, her crew and her captain, operating on the strength of a decrypted German signal that placed an enemy submarine in these waters. To many in the broader war machine, this kind of operation was a gamble at best, a single submarine dispatched to intercept another in the open sea, both of them submerged, neither able to use active sonar without betraying her own position. The technical consensus of the time was that it simply could not be done. Not reliably. Not against a submerged target. And certainly not alone. In 3 hours of silent, methodical tracking, HMS Venturer proved that consensus wrong. This is how. By the winter of 1944 into 1945, the Battle of the Atlantic had shifted decisively in the Allies' favor, but the U-boat threat had not been extinguished. The Kriegsmarine was still deploying submarines on operational missions, and among the most significant of those missions was Operation Caesar, an attempt to run a heavily laden submarine from occupied Europe all the way to Imperial Japan. The cargo was not men or standard munitions. It was technology, expertise, and one of the most toxic substances on Earth. U-864 was a Type IXD2 boat, the largest class of U-boat built in any significant numbers during the war. She displaced 1,610 tons on the surface and 1,799 tons when submerged. Her total length was 87.58 meters, her beam 7.49 meters, and she was powered by a combination of MAN and MWM diesel engines producing a total of 9,000 horsepower on the surface, giving her a maximum surface speed of 20.8 knots. Submerged, her twin Siemens Schuckert electric motors produced 1,000 shaft horsepower, and she could make 6.9 knots beneath the waves. She carried 6 torpedo tubes, 4 at the bow, 2 at the stern, with 24 torpedoes embarked, and her armament included a 10.5 cm deck gun with 150 rounds, a 3.7 cm flak M42, and 2 2 cm anti-aircraft guns. Her complement stood at 55 men. On paper, she was a formidable ocean-going submarine purpose-built for long-range independent operations. On paper, she was fast enough on the surface to outrun many escorts. On paper, her cargo gave her a strategic significance that made her worth protecting at nearly any cost. Commanded throughout her career by Corvettenkaptein Ralph Raymar Wolfram, she had left Kiel on the 5th of December 1944, bound ultimately for Japan via Bergen. Her hold contained approximately 67 short tons of metallic mercury, packed into 1,857 individual 32-kilogram steel flasks stored in her keel, along with parts and engineering drawings for German jet fighter aircraft, and a small group of specialist passengers, Messerschmitt engineers Rolf von Schlingenberg and Riklef Skomarus, Japanese torpedo expert Tadao Yamamoto, and Japanese fuel expert Toshio Nokai. The successful delivery of that cargo could have accelerated Japanese weapons development at a moment when the Pacific War was still being bitterly contested. The mission had real strategic weight. The boat carrying it was large, capable, and crewed by experienced men. HMS Venturer, by contrast, was a V-class submarine. Smaller, newer to the fleet, and entirely alone. HMS Venturer had been launched in 1943 and commissioned into the Royal Navy as Pennant No. P-68. The V-class were capable boats, well suited to the shallow and confined waters of the Norwegian coast where they often operated. But the advantage Venturer carried into these waters was not primarily one of tonnage or firepower. It was one of information, and of a commanding officer willing to push the logic of submarine warfare into territory where no established doctrine yet existed. The intelligence that sent Venturer out from Lerwick was drawn from decrypted German naval communications, intercepts that revealed U-864's movements and her orders to return to Bergen, where an escort would meet her at Hellesøy. U-864's journey to this point had been troubled. She had departed Kiel on the 5th of December 1944, arriving at Horten Naval Base in Norway 4 days later. Before leaving Germany, she had been fitted with a Snorkel mast, a device that allowed the submarine to run her diesel engines while submerged, venting exhaust and drawing in air through a mast that barely broke the surface. But there had been persistent problems with the Snorkel, requiring extended trials and repairs at Horten before the boat could be certified ready. She then ran aground en route to Bergen, requiring further repairs at Farsund, and did not reach Bergen until the 5th of January 1945. On the 12th of January, while docked in the Bruno U-boat pens at Bergen, she suffered minor damage when 32 RAF Lancaster bombers and 1 Mosquito from 9 and 617 squadrons attacked the port, at least 1 tallboy bomb penetrating the roof of the bunker and rendering one of the 7 pens unusable for the remainder of the war. By the time U-864 departed Bergen for the second time, heading north and then west toward the open Atlantic, she was already behind schedule and her crew had been dealing with equipment faults for weeks. Most critically, after passing the Fedje area on the 6th of February without being detected, one of her diesel engines began to misfire. The fault was significant enough that she was ordered to return to Bergen and await a surface escort at Hellesøy. That mechanical failure, and the radio signal reporting it, had placed her in Venturer's hands before the 2 submarines ever came within range of each other. The Snorkel, however, was the factor that made the engagement that followed genuinely unprecedented. The doctrine of the time held that a submerged submarine could not successfully engage another submerged submarine in open water. Active sonar, ASDIC in Royal Navy terminology, would reveal the attacking boat's position. Without it, there was no reliable means of tracking a target precisely enough to fire a successful torpedo solution. Both submarines would be blind in the most consequential sense: no visual contact possible, no radar, no active acoustics. What Venturer's commanding officer had was a hydrophone, a passive listening device, and the sound of U-864's misfiring engine. That engine noise was the thread. And if the attacking boat could build a picture of the target's movements over time, plotting bearings at intervals and triangulating a course, speed, and depth from those bearings alone, then a firing solution became theoretically possible. Not easy. Not certain. But possible, if the mathematics were done with enough patience and enough precision. The approach that followed lasted 3 hours. If the meticulous reconstruction of an enemy's position from nothing but sound and mathematics, the kind of reasoning that turned a single submarine into a decisive weapon, is the sort of story that keeps you returning to this channel, subscribing ensures you won't miss the next one. Venturer had made hydrophone contact with U-864's engine noise on the 9th of February. She refrained from using ASDIC throughout, accepting the restriction completely, never risking a single active pulse that might have given her position away. As the hours passed, the crew plotted the bearings. U-864 was zigzagging, a standard anti-submarine maneuver, varying course at intervals to complicate any attacker's solution. The zigzagging told Venturer's commander something important: the German crew knew, or at least suspected, that they were being followed. Their escort had not yet arrived. They were caught between the order to return to Bergen and the growing anxiety that something was already in the water behind them. 3 hours of plotting. 3 hours of adjusting the geometry as each new bearing refined or revised the picture. 3 hours of silence inside Venturer, the entire engagement conducted without a word over the wireless, without a single betraying ping. At 12:12 on the 9th of February 1945, HMS Venturer fired. All 4 bow torpedo tubes were discharged in sequence, at 17-second intervals, set to run at variable depths. The spread was designed to account for the uncertainty inherent in the firing solution, a solution derived entirely from passive acoustic bearings rather than visual or active sonar contact. No commander in the Royal Navy had attempted this before. The manual offered no established procedure because the engagement type had never been formally considered achievable. U-864 heard the torpedoes in the water. Her crew responded correctly and quickly, she dived deeper and turned away, attempting to comb the tracks of the incoming weapons. The first torpedo missed. The second missed. The third missed. U-864 had evaded 3 of the 4. Then she turned into the 4th. The torpedo struck. U-864 imploded under the pressure, broke in 2, and sank. She came to rest in over 150 meters of water, 2 nautical miles west of Fedje Island. All 73 men aboard were killed, Corvettenkaptein Wolfram, his crew, the Messerschmitt engineers, and both Japanese specialists. The Mercury, all 67 short tons of it contained in 1,857 steel flasks, settled into the seabed where it remains to this day, a toxic and unresolved legacy of a mission that never came close to completion. Venturer dived deeper immediately after firing, removing herself from any possible retaliation and breaking contact. The engagement was over. This was not, however, the first time Venturer had sunk a U-boat on this patrol cycle. 3 months earlier, on the 11th of November 1944, she had torpedoed and sunk U-771 in the Andfjord near Harstad in northern Norway. U-771 was a Type VIIC boat, smaller than U-864, displacing 769 tons surfaced and 871 tons submerged, with a length of 67.10 meters and a beam of 6.20 meters. Powered by 2 Germania-Werft F-46 diesel engines producing between 2,800 and 3,200 metric horsepower on the surface, she was capable of 17.7 knots surfaced and 7.6 knots submerged. She carried 14 torpedoes and 5 torpedo tubes, 4 forward, 1 aft, along with an 8.8 cm deck gun, a 3.7 cm flak M42, and twin 2 cm anti-aircraft guns. Her complement at the time of her sinking numbered 51 men, and none survived. U-771 had been commissioned on the 18th of November 1943 under Oberleutnant Sir C. Helmut Bloch, and had spent the majority of her service life in training with the 31st U-boat Flotilla before being assigned to operational duties with the 9th U-boat Flotilla on the 1st of June 1944. She had completed only 2 war patrols. Her first, beginning on the 21st of June 1944 from Stavanger, had lasted 25 days in the North Sea without making contact with any Allied vessels, though on the 26th of June she had participated in a joint anti-aircraft engagement with U-317 against a British Consolidated Liberator coded N from No. 86 Squadron RAF, north of the British Isles. U-317 was sunk during that action, and flak from U-771 damaged the Liberator sufficiently that it was judged beyond repair on return to base. It was the only enemy contact U-771 made before her sinking. She returned to Bergen on the 15th of July. Her second patrol began on the 14th of October 1944 from Hammerfest, following reassignments through the 11th and then 13th U-boat flotillas. 29 days after departing Hammerfest, she was in the Andfjord, and Venturer's torpedo ended her. 2 U-boats. 2 separate actions. A single British submarine, operating alone in Norwegian waters. The tactical results were stark in themselves: 2 enemy submarines destroyed, 124 men killed, 2 operational German boats removed from the order of battle. But the strategic significance extended beyond the arithmetic. The sinking of U-771 was a clean kill against an operational patrol boat, 1 fewer Type VIIC hunting Allied shipping in the Arctic approaches. The sinking of U-864, however, carried consequences of a different order. Operation Caesar was cancelled. The Mercury, the jet engine documentation, and the engineering expertise aboard that boat never reached Japan. Whether the technology would have made a material difference to the Japanese war effort by February 1945 is a question historians have debated since, but the fact of its non-arrival is not in question. Venturer settled that. The engagement with U-864 entered the technical literature of submarine warfare almost immediately after the war. It remains, as of the time of this recording, the only confirmed instance in history of a submarine sinking another submarine while both vessels were fully submerged. That distinction is not merely a record of curiosity. It demonstrated that passive hydrophone tracking, patient bearing plotting, and a carefully timed spread of torpedoes at variable depths and intervals could overcome what had been considered an insuperable tactical problem. The 17-second firing interval between each torpedo, calculated to give each weapon a distinct track and depth, was the specific mechanical expression of that solution. It was improvised under pressure, in the moment, by a crew that had no doctrinal template to follow. The wreck of HMS was located in March 2003 by the Royal Norwegian Navy, following a tip from local fishermen, and confirmed at 150 meters depth 2 nautical miles west of Fedje, precisely where the engagement records placed her. She lay in 2 major sections, fore and aft, with the central section including the conning tower entirely absent, destroyed by the implosion. In 2005, remotely operated vehicle surveys identified an additional 107 pieces of debris in the surrounding area. The mercury was found to be leaking at a rate of approximately 4 kilograms per year, contaminating cod, cusk, and edible crab across an area of some 30,000 square meters. Fishing and boating near the wreck have been prohibited. As of 2024, Norwegian authorities had decided to retrieve the accessible portions of the mercury in 2026 before entombing the remainder of the wreck in capping fill, a process similar to one successfully employed in roughly 30 mercury contamination sites over the preceding 2 decades. HMS will not be raised. She will be buried where Venturer put her. On the 9th of February 1945, a lone British submarine fired 4 torpedoes into water where no visual contact was possible, where no active sonar had been used, and where the entire geometry of the engagement had been built from the sound of a damaged engine and 3 hours of patient mathematics. 1 torpedo out of 4 was enough. Venturer had gone out alone. She came back with 2 kills to her name, 1 in November, 1 in February, and a record that has never been equaled in the history of submarine warfare. The naval establishment had said the second engagement was not possible. The mathematics had said otherwise. Nobody ever called her lone again. Thank you for watching. If this account of HMS Venturer's patrols has earned your subscription, please do subscribe and turn on notifications. The next ship's story is already in progress.